Hi, my name's Grainger and this is one of my midlife gap year videos. This year I am doing an experiment with my life and I've condensed all my work into 1 week a month, and the rest of the time I'm taking space for me. Really just to see how it impacts me to slow down, to have more space, to have more time for myself, to do different things, and to break some of the habits that I might have had around work. And being self-employed, as anybody who's watching this who is self-employed knows, there's always stuff to be done. The list of to-dos never ends. So this year is really about me being very disciplined with myself and just taking some space. So I've just come back from another week down in Spain. I just arrived back on Monday night, so been home for 48 hours, and as I was coming back on the plane I was really struck by a very vivid memory that I had of probably about 10 years ago, when I was flying back from the summer holidays in the south of France, and I cried the whole way home on the plane. Literally, I was almost inconsolable, and the reason I was crying so much was because I was so full of dread with coming back to real life after having had such a lovely holiday. The thought of going back to work, the job that I was doing at the time, the thought of coming back to Belfast, which I hated, to the house that I lived in, which I really didn't like, to all the stresses and strains that were inherent with my everyday normal life at that stage. I was just overwhelmed with sadness and really just didn't want to be here at all. And when I was coming back on Monday night from Spain, I was actually really looking forward to coming home, genuinely really looking forward to coming home. In fact, for the last 2 days of the holiday I've been really excited about coming home. And what I realised is that the gap between normal life or real life and holidays has just completely diminished this year for me, because I've got so much space, because I've created so much space for myself, and my day-to-day life is just a very different pace. And even the 1 week a month when I am working, the pace is very different. Mentally I'm very different, energetically I'm very different. The stress, any stress that I had, and I didn't have very much left, just seems to have dropped away over the last few months completely. So I was coming home, I was really looking forward to coming back to the garden here, to the beautiful sweet peas which have all just come out into bloom, to seeing our dogs, to seeing friends, to just being home. I was really looking forward to it. And again, this struck me that basically for the last 8 or 9 years of my life I had been living my life according to the law of attraction, which became famous in a little book called The Secret. And basically the law of attraction says that we're co-creating our life through our thoughts and through our feelings about different things. And the more that we focus our energy, our thoughts and our feelings and our actions onto certain things, the more we'll attract of those into our lives. So 10 years ago, when I'm flying back on the plane from France, I was focusing on all the things that weren't right in my life, all the things that were causing me stress and strain and pressure, and that was what was causing me to be very emotional. But at that time I also made a decision that things had to change. And it was very soon after that I attracted into my life my first life coach and started making some fairly radical changes to the way I was living my life. And that's been a gradual process over the last 10 years or so. So now I find myself living a life where the contrast between normal life and holidays is insignificant. It really doesn't exist very much, and for that I am deeply grateful and I feel hugely blessed. But I also do genuinely believe that a lot of this has been through my own attention and my own co-creation with the universe. I got very clear on what I wanted. So coming home on the plane 10 years ago, when I was crying and things like that, I was also thinking, gosh, how lovely it would be just to really look forward to coming home. How lovely it would be to have a beautiful home that I love. How lovely it would be to do work that I love, or to have more space, more time. And this, in law of attraction terms, the difference between what you want and what you're actually living is called contrast. And I do a lot of teaching on this topic of contrast. So contrast is anything in your life that you don't want or you don't like. And it can be in terms of the people around you, it can be in terms of how you feel about your body, your health, your finances, anything that you don't like or you don't want is called contrast. Now normally in day-to-day life what we do is we focus a lot of time and energy onto the contrast, onto telling all our friends about how awful our life is or what's going wrong, telling them about our terrible boss at work. We go online, we blog about it, we share, we just talk a lot about what we don't want, about the contrast in our life. And certainly the way I teach law of attraction is that the optimum amount of time to focus on the contrast is very briefly. But you have to recognise that contrast is there, and it's really important. The life I'm living now has been born out of contrast. I had to embrace the contrast. I had to recognise what I didn't want and what I didn't like in my life in order to manifest in what I did want. Because it's when we know what we don't want, then we know what we do want. So when you know what you don't want in your life, you know what you do want. So I knew I didn't want to do a job which I dreaded going home to or going back to after a holiday. I know I didn't want to be pressurized and stressed. I knew I didn't want to be financially constrained. All these different things I knew I didn't want. But my power came from recognizing what I didn't want and then asking myself, what do I want instead? And that's really how I've come to arrive in this place in my life, with all the blessings that it has. And so contrast is really, really important. A lot of the time we either talk about it a lot, the things that we don't want, or we try and ignore it and pretend it's not there. We bury our head in the sand. But what I'm saying to you is recognize the things that you don't want or don't like. Celebrate the fact that they're there, and then use them. Take your power back and use them to work out what it is that you do want. And gradually, over a period of time, bit by bit, it diminishes. The difference between what you do want and what you don't want diminishes and diminishes, and then you end up living a life which you want and which you love deeply and which you're really, really pleased to come home from holiday to. So I hope that inspires you a little bit, just to recognise the contrast. There's another little bit of contrast in the background here at the moment. I've just heard the chainsaw has just started, which is Owen, my partner, has obviously decided to chop a tree down or something like that in the garden. And in the past, I think I've probably moaned and groaned about my partners not doing things around the place and not being supportive and not being proactive. So rather than me give off about the chainsawing, I'm celebrating the fact that that little bit of contrast has now manifested a beautiful, wonderful partner, a wonderful relationship with a great guy who just loves creating beauty as much as I do. Hope that inspires you. I hope you can look at the contrast in your life in a slightly more positive way. This is something that I cover on all my Law of Attraction courses, and there'll be some new courses starting in September in Belfast and Dublin. So check out the website at freshstartcoaching.co.uk if you want to find out more about these 12-month courses I run. And yeah, it would be lovely to have you along on the journey, maybe to co-create the life that you dream of, the same as I've co-created the life that I dreamt of. I wonder what next. Namaste.